question I have for you, Sarah, is knowledge governance is a phrase we're hearing more often, but definitions definitely vary when it comes to that. So how do you define knowledge governance?
Thank you for saying that. And you know what? I want to like throw this out there. Like sometimes people are afraid to say, this term is thrown out all the time, but I don't really understand what you mean by the term. And sometimes having the bravery in organization to be like, okay, what do you truly mean by that is really helpful in order for us to actually make some like forward projections of like, what is it we're talking about? And then how can we solve it? So when I'm talking about knowledge governance, I'm talking about the structure of the organization is using to ensure that knowledge is accurate, it's compliant, it's aligned to business goals. So really what we're talking about is clear ownership, like who owns what. And then cycles, like how many times are we really reviewing the cycle to make sure that that is actually accurate. And then also standards for accuracy, format, like how are things actually on paper within, and making sure things are accessible, also really important. And then I guess the process that ensures knowledge stays updated is important, because sometimes in transformation, we move ahead with outcomes that are linked to revenue or efficiencies and these big top line headlines. But sometimes it's the day to day as things get updated that those processes need to move along with those changes. And it's important that there's a process to actually stop and say, okay, did we move? Did we change or shift things here? So a lot of times what you see are silo systems or fragmented data, or we've moved ahead with the top line, but we actually haven't continued on with like the pieces. So I often think about like a recipe, right? So if we're going to bake, I love making sourdough bread. And it's interesting because sourdough requires very specific measurements. And so we can look at a recipe and at the top, it has like the descriptions of like, this is what you're going to make and this is how you're going to do it. But it's still critical that you have like a quarter cup of salt and exactly the exact individual measurements. And so I think if you think about that in the same way of governance, we can have the top line, what we're trying to do, the results we're trying to measure in the business, but we need the structure in place with the operational knowledge that is more prescriptive of how things are actually done. And thinking about it like those little measurement pieces in a recipe are so critical to ensure that you have the success, the beautiful loaf at the end. If you just kind of wing it or you just try to push it through, you're not always going to get the results you're looking for. So I guess, it's really all about sourdough bread.